Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anna Nabutrem, and it's my honor to welcome you to the Spark of Change conference that is created especially for those who have passion and love for online events creation and want to learn how to do it nowadays. The organizer of this event, of this great evening for some, great morning for some others, is the online event support in cooperation with Kadeka Events Agency, Event Online, and Otako Studio, from where we're broadcasting right now. And I would like to thank also all of our partners who made it possible to create such a unique day for us all. Ladies and gentlemen, we've prepared for you three parallel stages, the stages that will show different aspects of event creation: the technology, stage number 1, the engagement, stage number 2, and management, stage number 3. But you can also meet our animation team in the special themed room, so where they are waiting you to show you some other possibilities of engaging your audience. And here on the stage number 1, we will also have a special show for you prepared by the multivisual. And we'll run those stages in parallel up to the debate that will crown today's meeting. And I hope you will all listen with a great pleasure to what we have to say during this panel, the panel of our discussion in this very interesting industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I've received the information that there is over 60 countries registered for today's event. The representatives of those countries have joined us, and there is over 1,000 people watching us today. So once again, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you as the audience coming from United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Canada, India, Philippines, Spain, Russia, China, Australia, Italy, Hong Kong, Poland, of course, and many, many others. And having this opportunity, we would like to ask you to fill in our chat with your answers to the question: what, in your opinion, is the most challenging when trying to put up a virtual event, when organizing a virtual event in 2020 or 2021? We're extremely curious about what are your feelings about the subject. And I think that's the highest time for the opening speech of Michał Michałowski, CEO of Online Event Support, who's joining us from the Green Room, showcasing another great opportunity that is delivered by the Otako Studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely thrilled to open Spark of Change 2021, and it's official now. So I'm thrilled because I've been waiting for this moment for the last 6 months. And yes, it all started 6 months ago. So we sat with the team and we asked ourselves, what is the market missing? What are we missing? By then, we've done plenty of virtual events, delivered engaging formulas, had hordes of satisfied clients, but we also discovered that there is a huge gap of missing know-how on the market. So the demand on virtual events was huge. Clients wanted to have their events nice and shining, with this wow effect. But at the same time, there was not many of us who knew how to do it, what technology to use, how to engage the audience. And for me, it was like, challenge accepted. Let's change it. So we started digging, we started brainstorming and saying, let's organize this conference for event professionals. Let's make one big stage with like 8 speakers, maybe a small debate at the end, and maybe 1 or 2 attractions. But you know what? In 3 days, the same team came to me and said, Michael, it's not possible to squeeze in like everything in one pot. There is technology, there is engagement and management and so much more. And this was the moment when we simply realized and asked ourselves, why settle for less if we can have the best? And look at the conference now. We have those amazing speakers with great background, event authorities, but also what is important for me, wonderful people. And they are waiting in their starting blocks right now to deliver a really meaningful speeches. We have 3 stages, which are so different. and over like 15 attractions, which we serve as a dessert at the end. But most important, we have you, the attendees, and there are over 1,000 people from 60 countries. And we are here for you. So go ahead, challenge us, ask us difficult questions, and never stop making your next virtual event as good as you want it to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, the door of Spark of Change are open now for you. Thank you and enjoy.
Michał, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the next hours will be filled with the inspiring speeches of the performances, of the thoughts, of the everything that is filling the minds of our specialists from all around the globe. But of course, we'll kick off this meeting with the keynote speech by Max. Max, who is a prominent figure within the industry and has been voted as one of the top current industry influencers, and who has worked with major global brands such as Google, Samsung, Facebook, and LinkedIn, to name but a few. With the great pleasure, I give you Max Fellows with great expectations, the key principles driving the future of virtual experiences. Hi, Max. How are you?
Very well, thank you indeed. How are you?
I'm fine, and even I think I can say for all of us here, I'm fabulous. Waiting for you to deliver your keynote speech. So without waiting any longer, the stage is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone around the world that is tuning in. I really appreciate your attention and time, and I'm really excited to be kicking off Spark of Change 2021 with my keynote, Great Expectations, talking about the key principles driving the future of virtual experiences. As mentioned, my name is Max Fellows. I am the co-founder of Virtual Events Directory, Elevate Consulting, and also I'm a growth specialist supporting brands and also agencies within the events industry. A quick bit about me: I'm hugely passionate about people. I'm hugely passionate about events, and community is something I massively believe in, all of which form part of my talk today. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's talk about experience, or should I say expectations. Expectations are huge. Basically, it's a strong belief that something will happen. Something has happened. Unfortunately, we have gone through a huge shift and change in our events industry. But the expectations off the back of it are exciting now. They're great to an extent. The virtual event space is now valued at over $90 billion, and that's as of the end of 2020. It's expected that at a growth rate of 23%, by 2027, the virtual events market is going to be worth a whopping $400 billion. And that's some huge expectations. But not everything goes to plan, and expectations don't always meet our certain standards. And some might see or say, these are some common issues, or should I say some expectations that didn't quite meet our certain standards. This happened to me only last week, where my wife walked across the back of a shot at a live event singing a rendition of Beyonce. But unlike all expectations, unfortunately, this happens now. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, we thought this was possibly the worst it could get, but unfortunately not. But expectations have also changed. So moving on to the future of, or looking back as to what has built on these expectations. So with this, let's look back at March, when this all really happened, when this all really kicked off and started. I want you to think about it. When did you think that the live events industry would fully return back in March, when it really impacted? The truth being is that no one really knew, but 68% of the entire industry believed that September would be the key time that live events would fully return. That's a huge amount, 68%. But to put it into context, that period of time in March was massive. It was hugely important. And the reason being, here's a statistic for you, 85 million people. So that's a statistic, 85 million people. That's how many people were affected within the first 6 weeks of the pandemic. And those are people affected either by cancellations, postponements, alternatively, having their event organised and transitioned into a virtual format. So that's 85 million, which I think is incredible. So the expectations there were low, but ended up being huge, absolutely massive. But it's also something that we should look forward to. As an industry, we've done something incredible. I call it agility. A lot of other people will call it something different. Some might say a true pivot. Ross here has done an exceptional job here. But let's also cast our minds back once more. Let's look at 2020, at the back end, when we expected things to take place. So we thought live events would be coming back in September. And at this point as an industry, we thought we'd be out the other side of it. We thought we'd be back into live and virtual would be a thing of the past. But in actual fact, what we've seen here is the second true evolution of digital, a micro digital evolution, if you will. So we've seen 80% of all virtual platforms on the market having been created in just 12 months, which is a phenomenal statistic. I think it just goes to state or show just how exciting and just how great some of those expectations are. And now, rather than looking back, let's look to the future. So let's look at 2021. Those predicted back in September that the end of Q1 is that we'd be out and we'd be fresh and clean in live events again. But unfortunately, it's looking like it will be the tail end of this year. But rather than waiting for live, realistically speaking, is that what we're looking at and the expectations is a combined future, a future of live and virtual hand in hand harmoniously. What we'll also see is this third wave of innovation during this period, where virtual platforms, event organisers and agencies working hand in hand, leveraging existing platforms and technologies and integrating new ways, new social, new communication channels to bring these experiences up to these great expectations that we're going to now have. And who knows when virtual, or should I say live, is truly going to be back. One thing I would say though, is that live, we love it. We all miss it greatly. We really do. That's why we do and got into the events industry in the first place. But you don't have to pick your favorite. You don't have to pick whether you prefer live events or virtual events, like picking a favorite child. We can have both, and both are going to work. And especially when the virtual events industry is going to grow at a rate of 23% year on year. So whilst we wait, and like my good friend here, Bernie is also waiting. Bernie, I promise you live events are going to come back. I promise you live events are going to come back. You just have to wait. But here's a few reasons why. So 68% of all event planners have invested heavily and will continue to do so in virtual events going forward for the remainder of 2021. 78% of event planners are going to be committing and would prefer to have a hybrid solution. And 93% of global event planners really are looking for and investing in virtual going forward for the next 2 years as a minimum. And so what does this show us? This shows us there is proof, there is belief, and there is support that virtual events aren't going anywhere. In fact, there is a commitment to see them thrive, grow, and develop. Hybrid is not a one-off. It's going to develop future forward. So, getting on to the key principles driving the future of virtual experiences. What I'm hoping to do now is exceed expectations. But what we're going to do as an industry using these key principles is also exceed expectations. But it's less about the tech itself, as I mentioned earlier. It's much more around the way in which we're using tech, the clever ways in which we're integrating new ways of doing things with existing machines, existing technologies. Let's dive into this and have a look. So, data, the beast that is. Data rules the world. I personally love it. A lot of people don't. But the thing about data is that in order to be able to leverage it, we have to understand it. We have to know where to find it, refine it, and how to use it. So given that all actions on virtual platforms are traceable, there's data trails, it means that we have a huge opportunity here to leverage data to refine and excel the experience moving forward. So let's look at the key principles within data. So we've got 6 here. And so the first that I'm going to go through, tailoring to your audience. Leveraging data to be able to understand your audience's passion points, understanding what speeches that they've attended, understanding the times in which they prefer to digest content is going to be really key. We're going to have to emphasize with their commitment of time and tailor their experience to match. We can use data to do exactly this. Return on investment leverages data in such a way that we can measure the touch points. We can leverage all of those touch points throughout the virtual event in order to be able to generate an effective measurement tool, to be able to see exactly real time what happens. Real time is the next one, which is all around the analytics. So real time and data is a really fascinating point here, is that we can leverage analytics that, such as feeds from cameras now, to track people's eye movements. We can track using real time data how engaged people are, what their focus is on, and what content turns people off. So that real time, we can look at a dashboard and see that, let's say a speaker is delivering some content that loses the audience, we can communicate with them and let them know that that's the case and to generate some excitement. We're also going to see moving forward lead generation leveraging data. So CRM systems are going to form a partnership with tech platforms to encourage, really, to increase the sales cycle and also the rate in which we're able to convert sales. Feedback is another fascinating one in which we're leveraging data. So we're getting real-time feedback, tracing people's movement through the site, where people are dropping off as well is really interesting. Let's say you have someone that's going to be registering for your live event. You can see using data at what point they got on that buyer's journey, when they didn't complete or why they didn't complete. It's going to be fascinating. And lastly, we can be proactive. We can use the data that we have to be able to create proactive, tailored invites, tailored agendas to really form a personalized experience, which is going to be what this is all about. So our next key principle is all around content. And I assure you, content is absolutely still king. This is the number one factor that we need to pay attention to, content. So we have 6 sub-principles here. So content reset is fascinating. So people are going to be cynical as they're looking at your presentation. Unlike a live event, there are stimulants around you. With an online virtual event, it is purely your content. So we have to really think about how we can make this content more compelling. One of the key ways of doing this is throwing the Keynote traditional presentation model out the window. Throw it away. In fact, what we're going to be looking at is completely reinventing it to a 15 to 20 minute model, which makes it far more digestible, far more engaging, and far more exciting. We're going to see a collaborative approach with content coming through. As we see these 2 channels of hybrid, or should I say live and virtual, progressing forward, we're going to need to work together, both as brands, as agencies, with our technology partners to develop content that works across both mediums. It's going to be fascinating because that partnership is something we're going to see more of. On demand is a content principle that is something that we have all been, or mostly should have been, delivering. And that is making sure that everything that is captured, everything that is delivered in a live event is then available afterwards. a crazy statistic is that 25% of all content is digested on demand after the actual event itself. 25%. So moving on to relevance, personalized, authentic content and content that allows people a choice, giving people the choice and choosing what they want to listen to, giving them a choice of sessions that they can move around to is going to be key. No exception. It has to be unique and tailored to create that experience. People have choice now. Penultimately, audio and voice. And this one has me very excited. So there's two parts to this. We have Alexa, and we use voice recognition for this. Again, most people will be ordering their shopping via Alexa, but voice recognition is actually going to be used for someone, let's say at a virtual event, to be able to call up what their agenda might be. Tell me who's the keynote speaker. So voice is going to play a key part as a principle moving forward, especially within content, but also audio is. We're very much dependent on visual stimulants and also watching people on screen. But there's a huge power in audio. You only have to look at the exponential growth of Clubhouse as an app which uses a purely audio-based platform. Imagine a podcast, but you can react and speak to the person back in a controlled environment. It's shown over 4,000% growth in the last 3 months alone, so it can't be ignored. What it also is great for is community, and I'll touch on that in a minute. And then lastly, content that can be delivered on a pay-as-you-go basis. So people don't want to be able to be tied in to an event, an experience anymore, where they're paying for 2 days worth of content, but they really only need to see that one keynote speaker, that one session where they can get involved in. So we have to think about the current state of how people want to choose to. Again, it comes back to that bespoke nature of experiences. So next we have connected. So this is our penultimate principle, being connected. Other people call it engagement, but it's recognizing the fact that everyone has so many other external factors affecting their attention spans at the moment. We as adults look at our phones over 150 times a day. So imagine delivering content and having a phone sat beside you going off. Your focus is going to be off, absolutely. And engagement is also the number one challenge that all event professionals are really trying to solve when it comes to virtual experiences. And we'll have a look at how we're going to do that. So 6 principles here. So encompassing experiences. This one is really special. It's really special because there's 2 parts to it. We need to think as brands about experiences and putting on events that involve people, that are inclusive, that do not mean that anyone has to miss out on anything. So as an example, as part of the registration process, going forward, to make these virtual events successful, we need to be checking people's Wi-Fi capabilities, and we can do that with a quick test. Now, where there isn't sufficient Wi-Fi, because there's homeschooling going on, it could be for many other factors, why don't we send them a dongle as part of the registration package? That means that they're online, that means that they're being included, and I promise you that they would recognize that, I promise you. Secondly is obstacles to engage. This also forms part of that inclusivity aspect of it. So one of the key things here is that as we are going to move into a hybrid type format of events, we're going to have a live aspect again, which is hugely exciting, huge. But what that means though, is that could look like people needing a digital passport where they can prove that they've been vaccinated. So we need to be really careful here because pregnant women, people with underlying health issues won't be able to be vaccinated as the tests just haven't been completed yet. So we need to be really careful as to how we make sure that there are no obstacles to engage and we're empathetic, because there are other factors as well. Childcare, homeschooling, these are all intrinsic factors we need to consider to create this incredible experience. Community is one of my passion points. It's one of the things I really believe in. Again, it's why I think Clubhouse is doing so well. So community is one of the fastest growing requirements of virtual events going forward in 2021. People want to communicate and they want to connect, both before, during, and after. It's something that we need to be really aware of. And it features in more than 50% currently of virtual events, and it's going to keep increasing and something that we need to pay attention to. Now, networking is a challenge that people have. Networking is a challenge that a number of different platforms have tried to develop and come up with. But the truth of the matter is, networking virtually can be efficient. It can be really beneficial. people get the opportunity to pre-qualify, pre-engage with contacts, meaning that during your event, they can engage with them directly and therefore engage with more people. We miss the serendipitous moments of leaning by the bar, having a drink and bumping into people talking around random stuff. But this is about efficiency. We can actually use data to generate AI, or should I say we can use AI to generate like-for-like people and personas and actually suggest people who might be able to network or people that they might want to meet. So penultimately, we have gamification. Now, to ensure our audiences are engaged, gamification is one of the paramount and primary tools here. By recognizing and rewarding people's involvement, by creating leaderboards, by sharing that and enabling people to see, we're actually increasing that level of engagement and doing it in a really subtle but fun manner. And then lastly is tech integration. So one of the things we need to consider here is that whilst platforms or machines aren't changing, computers will remain computers, phones will very much remain phones. What they can do and how they work together is how we're going to see things evolve on the content and on the engagement side. So there is a concept that's been developed called Unbound. And Unbound plays out a story, it's content, but what it does is it engages you through your phone, through phone calls, text messages, video. And by using different aspects and different elements, what it does is it pulls you in and it really makes you the heart of that story using your other devices, meaning that you're not then using those to be distracted elsewhere. And our last and final point here, our key principle, and that is commercialization and being commercial. So a sad fact here is that during those 6 weeks where we talked about in March and going forward, less than 40% of event professionals and events that took place were able to transition their live event to a financially profitable virtual one. So that's over 60% of virtual events currently make a loss, which makes no commercial sense, right? It just doesn't. 80% of all virtual events around the world, all virtual events are free. And of those free events, only 80% of attendees turn up, which are crazy statistics. So we have a problem at the moment within the virtual industry. We have a problem that we need to collaborate on and work together with our platforms, with our agencies, with our teams. We need to look at the business model, better support each other and better support how we can drive that forward. Here's 6 principles as to how we can do that. The first is a subscription model. Now take examples from the likes of Netflix, for example. By creating a series of events and having someone subscribe to it, it means that they are less likely to pull out and also means that there's a lot more value. You can then leverage that to be able to get more sponsorship, which we talk about, and it means that you are creating much more value, much more content, and a multi-event deal of sorts. So it's a great way to generate revenue. Secondly is sponsorship. So we need to think about traditional sponsorship and how we might be able to sell that. We need to think about customizable branding. We need to think about impressions rather than actual space. How many people have seen that logo? How many people have engaged with that brand and banner? These are things now that we need to really think about monetizing, as well as then using sponsorship to bolt on apps and sponsor stages or content or even on demand. These are all opportunities now that are up for grabs and that we should be looking how to monetize. Exclusive access is also a great way to commercially monetize it. So exclusive access will allow people for the price of their ticket to get behind the scenes action, to be able to engage with their VIPs, to be able to speak directly to that keynote speaker. These are kind of almost money can't buy type experiences, but these are things that people will pay for that will add huge value to that ticket, that event ticket. Reward is very similar to the gamification aspect. Let's reward those contributors. Let's make sure that we're acknowledging those that have shared, and that sharing in turn will make money. Shareable is off the back of that reward and recognition. And this may sound obvious, and this is the penultimate point, one of the most important. It may sound obvious, but most sharing or most platforms don't have a sharing function. And when they do, they aren't actually tracked, which is crazy because over 80% of sharing goes on the dark web. And I don't mean the naughty web, I mean the dark web, in that people are copying, pasting links to events, they're putting it into WhatsApp, they're putting it into emails and sharing it rather than doing so via tracked links. So we need to be putting in there shareable links that can be tracked. That helps with our ROI, but it also means that we can recognize who promoted and prompted the service more, the platform more. And then lastly, payment models. So this is where we think about subscription models, but in a different manner. So payment models are pay to play, let's say pay as you go. Let's look at things where, or even look at different payment models from the music industry. You could buy a ticket and you can add a bolt on where you get to have a virtual lunch with someone. It might be that you get to have a phone call with the CEO. There's different ways that we can create these payment models to make it far more personalized, make the experience seamless and far more exciting. So that's it. Data, content creation, connectivity, networking, engagement, and commercial. And these are the 4 key principles that are really going to help to drive forward the virtual events industry and virtual experiences in 2021. So I'm going to leave you with a final thought here. And that final thought is around this, is that we as an industry have pivoted in only 9 months. And that's only 9 months. With the level of innovation that has been demonstrated is unparalleled. The industry is now worth 90 billion, soon to be worth another, well, up to over 400 billion, which means that it's hugely exciting. So I, for one, think that we should have great expectations for the future of virtual, great expectations for what we can do as event planners, event professionals, using the platforms and the relationships that we have. I want to thank you. My name's Max Fellows. I've really enjoyed sharing some of my insights, principles and best practices with you. Please do connect with me. As I said, networking and connectivity is something I'm passionate about. LinkedIn, Instagram, Clubhouse, I really don't mind. But if you do want to have a conversation with me or ask any questions, I'm going to be manning the Virtual Events Directory booth, which you can find off of the main stage for the next half hour or so. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got some intrinsic value from this, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Max, thank you very much for this inspiration. And we are now dividing our stream into 3 stages. Technology, stage number 1, where we are currently on. The management, the stage number 3, and the engagement, stage number 2. And talking about stage number 2, I would like to also remind you about the themed rooms, where our animation team engaging our audience is awaiting you with their ideas. So we have 3 stages running in parallel up to the debate, and their timing is to be the same, so you can migrate between the topics. So you can check the agenda of all 3 of them on our platform and choose those topics that are most interesting for you at the given moment, and come from one stage to another and listen what our great speakers have to say, and also take part in the question and answer, because for each of them you can send your questions that we will then ask to them and get the responses immediately to you. The stage number 2 is being driven by Maciej, stage number 3 by Damian. So with great pleasure I give over those 2 stages to them, and they will already provide you with the information what are you going to expect on those 2 stages.